Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. Happy Friday. Hopefully you guys are doing well. I'll give you guys a couple minutes. We'll see who kind of shows up for the live stream. Those of you guys who are new to my channel, welcome. So I'm a Western astrologer and I work with tarot as well as astrology and the Sabian symbols. And we alternate every other Friday between doing live donation-based readings. Sometimes we do astrology, sometimes we do tarot. This Friday, we're going to be doing live astrology readings. So if you guys are new to this, basically if you would like to get a reading for the eclipse readings that we're doing, so we're primarily focusing on that, you guys can make your donation. It's $50 donation, either asking a question in regards to how this most recent solar eclipse is affecting your chart, or if you have something else, you can scan the QR code right here. It's going to take you to my PayPal where you can make a donation of $50 or more. And please, in the memo, put your information. So I need to know at least your first name. If your name differs on YouTube versus PayPal, I need your exact time, date, location of birth, including the AM or the PM. Usually that information can be found on a birth certificate, or if you have that information on record. And then I'll cast your chart live. We'll take a look at it and I'll be answering your guys' questions. Please be very specific with your question because it's going to make it easier for me to take a look at what you got going on in your chart. And please, I guess something else I could say is just we appreciate your patience because there can be a number of people who, we're going to be kind of looking at today. So if you guys would like to get a reading, make sure that you scan the QR code, make your donation, and get in the queue. That way you're guaranteed to get a reading. We've already got about maybe 6, 7, 8 people who are already waiting. I'll leave the queue open probably for about 15-20 minutes. So if you guys want to sign up, you can. Big thank you to all of the members and subscribers. Thank you guys for your support. Do me a favor and give me a thumbs up during this stream. It's really helpful. It's going to help with the engagement also of the channel. And if you guys want to hang out and just chat and be in the chat, you can do that too. Sometimes we have people who like to hang out here on Friday nights. What's up, Stephanie? No worries. Hey, Sonia. So I just want to give you guys a heads up of who we have so far. I did get the Mystic Road and Kara. I know you guys are both members, so we're going to be talking to you guys first. That's like the benefit of being a level 3 member. If you join my memberships, not only do you support my content and make it possible for me to be a full-time content creator, but you're also going to get a reading from me once a month. And for all of our level 3 people, we make sure that we take care of them first. That way you're guaranteed to get readings when you show up for the lives once a month. You can choose between tarot and astrology. Otherwise, you're going to be sometimes waiting a little bit depending on the evening. We just recently had a solar eclipse in Aries. So I anticipate a lot of people are going to be asking questions about that. We're just going to see, because we are in the midst of eclipse season. This is the very first eclipse that we just had in 2023. And 2 weeks from now, we're going to have a lunar eclipse that's going to be in Scorpio. That's also going to bring lots of change. And that'll be like a full moon on steroids. And also we've got a Mercury retrograde happening. So the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks or so are going to be rather intense. So you guys can always check back here on another Friday if you'd like to get a tarot or an astrology reading. You may need one at a later date if that's something that provides you guys with some kind of guidance. Hello, everybody. Hey, Sharon. Hey, Ben. What's up, Maria? Hey, Melissa. Ben says, the beauty of being an Aries rising is most delineations without rising sign specifics shouldn't really apply. The beauty of being a Libra rising, I get the best of both worlds. I get to see it go down, and I also get to experience it. So, ignorance is bliss for the Aries risings. What's up, Sophia? All right, so let me let you guys know who I've got already. We've got Kara, obviously the Mystic Road, Melissa. Rome, are you here? I went through my, I cleared all my charts recently. Sometimes I'll have like hundreds of charts, so I just have to clear them every so often and kind of start over. So Rome, if you're here, please send your birth information. Just let me know if you have a particular question. Then I have Maritza, Amber, Laura. Is that everybody? And we just had Magic Lotus sneak in there. So I've got all of you guys so far. What's going on? No worries. Just send it over to me and I'll make sure that I save that. And before I even really get into it, let me go ahead and add you in Mystic Lotus really quick. So that way I've got you guys in here, because you know at some point I have to break and then I end up putting in more charts. So if you guys are new to this, you know how that works. There's Lotus. What's up, Kay? What's up, Laura? We got a couple Lauras. Thank you, Rom. 91582. How's everybody doing since the eclipse? Anybody have anything crazy happen? I feel like nobody really gets a pass, you know, because of the square to Pluto. It was pretty gnarly. Laguna Beach. So we've got Rome in there, and then let me add Lotus. And then we'll get started. I won $1,000 in the lotto today. Wow. Congrats. That's amazing. That's the kind of eclipse stuff I want to hear. 5/16/86. Somebody said they got into a car accident. I'm sorry to hear that. That's not pleasant. Hopefully you're okay. A lot of that's Mercury retrograde stuff too. 29. And that was in the Bronx. It's kind of wild to see like the retrograde happen with like the Sun square Pluto and all that stuff. Just the last 3 days, the energy has been rough. It's been rough out there. Yet another stampede happened. Oh, I did not hear about that. What's up, Coco? I saw you get in there, so you paid the difference for the Sinistry, right? People who are asking how to make this, or how to make sense of this, if you want to get a reading, it's by donation. It's $50 US. You can scan the QR code right here with your phone. It'll take you directly to my PayPal, make the donation. I need to know your name, time, date, location of birth. Please spell it out. I'm in the United States. Sometimes it's a little different in other places. What's up, Ben? He got a job interview. We'll see. No worry, Coco. All right, so let's go ahead now that I've got a number of people, and I saw Rob slid in there too. So when we get to Rob, that's when I will be inputting all the new charts. We'll leave that open for a little bit for you guys. So let's go ahead and start first. We're gonna talk to Coco, and then we're gonna do Mystic Road. Thank you guys for being level 3 subscribers. I appreciate it. So let's take a look at what you were asking me. I'm gonna do the composite because you're asking questions about the two of you. Curious when Jay might contact me again. I shared some hard truths with them around Pisces new moon. Started to withdraw my energy, but who knows if it's over. Holding space for an apology. So we've got your birthday December 1st, 89. Their birthday January 15th, 78. And this is going to be your midpoint composite chart, because if you're asking questions about what may or may not happen between the two of you, I'm going to go off of the composite chart, not off the Sinistry. So looking at this, you've got an Aquarius rising, Sun in Capricorn, and the moon is located in Pisces. Okay, so it's interesting that you said Pisces new moon, sharing some hard truths. Well, Saturn was in conjunction to your guys' composite moon, so that can be about just being very direct and really honest and realistic about feelings within the emotional connection. In the first house, it may be things in regards to boundaries, emotional boundaries. So Saturn moon transits in a natal chart or in a composite chart can be very challenging because there is this kind of like coldness that can kind of come up in the relationship. Sometimes we cut people off emotionally, sometimes we have emotional distance. It really just depends. Because this is an Aquarius rising chart, it's co-ruled both by Uranus as well as Saturn. So Saturn transits are going to be really prominent. Saturn on the moon obviously is going to be an important one because this is how we emotionally relate. But also Saturn is coming into a trine with Pluto. So it does kind of talk about how there can be something that's radically transforming or potentially like detoxifying or clearing or cathartic in regards to being able to speak your piece and kind of say how you're really feeling emotionally. And your guys' composite chart, the Sun, Neptune, Venus all being in the 12th house, clearly you guys are working through issues with karma. Clearly you're working through issues that might be subconscious or things that you guys aren't totally aware of or things that might be more spiritual. What's working in your favor, even though the Saturn moon transit is challenging, is that Saturn's trining Pluto as well as your guys' composite Saturn. So lessons to be learned about this experience. Even if you guys don't work out or there is no apology or you don't reconnect, there is a sense of being like, okay, I learned the importance of speaking my piece and really telling somebody how I feel. And if they can't kind of show up to the plate, then that was my lesson, then they're not ready, right? You guys also have an exalted Jupiter in the sign of Cancer. So you guys have Jupiter in opposition to the Sun. And I feel like that can represent periods of like, you know, going apart, coming together, going apart, coming together. So I don't know how long you guys have had your interaction, but you may learn more when you're in the kind of separateness of like reevaluating what you need and whether or not you're really ready to do the work on a personal level before meeting that other person in a relationship. I like the Sun in opposition to Jupiter. It feels like anything's possible. So I think there is a way to kind of look at these periods of not always having a lot of togetherness or connection as being optimistic that they're still going to continue to keep working through things. I think with, you know, Saturn going back and forth over your moon, like I'm not going to candy coat it, like that's going to happen all year, right? So even though Saturn's moving away from your moon right now, it will retrograde and come back in the fall. And that could manifest literally as having not just emotionally boundaries, but boundaries in regards to being like, look, you can't just call me up when you're having a crisis. You can't just show up at my house or you're not going to be, you know, spending the night here. There can be things like that come up throughout this transit. Next year, you know, Saturn's going to move deeper into Pisces. It's going to come into a square with the nodes. And I can feel like if there is a situation where there is no solid commitment or investment in the relationship or claiming each other in the relationship, because Saturn in the second house can be about possessions or financially building towards the future, or if somebody's not saying, yes, we are together, I'm in this, there can be challenges, right? Because Saturn will square the nodes all next year. Something else that's going on is your third house is about communication, right? Aries, and it's ruled by Mars. So you're having eclipses now in your third house, and you're also seeing that transit Neptune is in direct opposition to Mars. So there can be this feeling of like, well, you're not saying anything, so how do I know that you're really invested in this? How do I know that you care? You want to watch for just like, you know, disregarding, you know, having conversations. You know, there can be a sense of wanting to just dismiss the situation if you're not hearing what you need to hear from someone, especially because Neptune is also in a square to your guys' natal Mercury. So you've got a really complex, you know, mutable T-square. And I feel like it could even lead you to kind of questioning, like, can we even be friends? Like, you know, are we on the same page? Can we move forward? Because Mercury becomes the focal point of that square. I feel between a Venus retrograde in your 7th house, which will be like the second half of July of 2023 through the beginning of September, and a Mercury retrograde, which is going to be the second half of August going into early September, both of those retrogrades are going to be in your guys' composite 7th house. So likely, I think that we may actually see that that's an opportunity for you to really reassess the situation and see if you guys can come back together. Ironically, like Mercury is going to come into an opposition with your guys' moon and also transit Saturn, and it's then going to retrograde. So I really feel like the end of August is when there is an opportunity to kind of really like assess this and decide whether or not you guys have both worked through some of the stuff that you need to work through separately to really be capable of being able to show up in the relationship. Keep in mind that transit Pluto is in Aquarius now. So it is going to this year and next year go in and out of Aquarius and square your guys's, composite Pluto. So this is going to be about who's in charge in the relationship, who has a say in things. There can be power struggles. There can be themes like that can kind of go down. But do I think it's possible for you guys to overcome and be able to reconcile and at least talk? Yeah, I do. I think that 2 retrogrades in the 7th house aspecting, your chart ruler is definitely going to bring that up. On one hand, it's going to oppose Saturn, so it's going to show where there's been some distance and cooling off. On the other hand, it's going to also be trining transit Uranus. So it's bringing you guys back together and kind of talking about where things stand emotionally. But possibly it's going to end up being a situation where, right around the end of the summer, you're going to know whether or not you're going to be able to move forward. It can be challenging having a composite chart where you have Venus in the 12th house or the Sun in the 12th house or Sun conjunct Neptune, because there can be this feeling that there's like blind spots in the connection or something that cosmically kind of keeps bringing you guys together, but also kind of keeps you apart. I would look also separately at both of your guys' transits to your natal chart and see who's supposed to be playing which role, right? Because it will be very clear that one of you are really ready to move forward and you may be questioning whether or not you're going to actually close that door and move on. And you're giving that person an opportunity to really show up before you make that decision. And there's probably going to be another person that's going to be like, I don't know which end is up. I'm still working my stuff out. Give me more time. Because you guys are having so many transits that are activating the 1st and the 7th house, which is what I am doing, what I need, my direction, and then where we are going together and how we can kind of meet each other in the middle. There is a need for like lots of mediation and understanding and the willingness to hear each other out and to really reevaluate whether or not there's something really good here. But regardless of what happens between now and the summer, like more of this is, I think, going to pan out closer to July and August. And I would hold space for that because Venus going retrograde in your 7th, the squares to Jupiter and Uranus in your 4th makes me feel like you're going to be reevaluating what's happened in the past. And probably reevaluating also like where you guys are both at in terms of like your home and your private life and whether or not, you're making changes which may potentially impact the potential of a future relationship, or where the need for change on the home front is putting the pressure on, the other person being like, are you with it or not? And I would see what happens, right? Because I think there's a lot of opportunity for you guys to come together. I also know that later in the year, you're going to see a Mercury retrograde also that's going to be going through, starting in Capricorn, it's going to retrograde back into Sagittarius. So that's going to be like mid-December through the beginning of 2024. It's another time where there could be a reconnection. But I don't think you're going to have to wait that long. I think you're probably going to start to see right around the end of summer, things are going to shift. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful. Keep us updated. Yeah, Juliana, it is still open. We're gonna leave it open for a few minutes. What's up, Rocky? I was randomly unsubscribed, probably because Google doesn't like some of the stuff I talk about, so make sure you're subscribed. Everybody make sure you're subscribed. Give me a thumbs up if you're watching this as well. Thanks, Melissa. I will look at that in just a second when we get to your reading. We're going to leave it open for a few more minutes. I got Robert, Diana, Juliana, Vernish Studio, and Abby. You guys all got in there. Thank you. You're in the queue. Mystic Road had a question. And then that'll be all the level 3 people. And let's see what Mystic Road said. What would be some key dates for my business changes during eclipse season? Good question. So asking questions about making changes with business. Obviously, being that you're a Virgo rising, Mercury rules your 10th house of career. It's also your chart ruler. So that's why, Virgo risings, Mercury retrogrades doubly affect you guys. I wouldn't recommend making any changes until Mercury goes direct, but like during a Mercury retrograde, you know, deciding that you want to come up with new services, work on a website, figure out pricing, you know, all of that stuff, that's what I would do. You know, the retrograde in itself is in Taurus, and it's going to be in your 9th house, and it's going to be trining your ascendant and Pluto. So I think it's a lot of like things shifting in regards to the bigger picture of your life, what you could be teaching, coming up with marketing campaigns, ways to be able to promote some of your services, things like that. So if you're wondering when you can make some changes, I think that's what you asked me, some key date for business changes, you're kind of already in it, but let's say maybe something like when Mars and Mercury come into aspect. So actually on the 23rd, Mercury is going to sextile Mars. Mars rules your 8th house of change. So you might make those changes around the 23rd. You can also wait until the Moon and Mars come together on the 25th, making sextiles also to Mercury and Uranus. You'll see me talk about this during my weekly astro weather, but I talk about how next Sunday is like a really great day to get a lot of work done because the sun will be in Taurus. We're going to see that the moon will go into Virgo. It's going to trine the sun and Mercury. That's a day where even in spite of the Mercury retrograde, there's an opportunity to clean up, organize, perfect, tweak, go back and like finalize something. So that's another date. I don't remember exactly when that is. I think that's the 30th. Yeah. And you're going to have the moon in your sign, and it's going to be trining the 9th house. I mean, you don't really have to have anything ready until the retrograde's over. So that would be another date that I would watch. When the sun comes into conjunction with Mars, I feel like right around May 3rd, a lot of the changes that you've been making are now complete. And probably what's going to happen is you're going to wait until Mercury goes direct. And when Mercury goes direct, then you're going to be able to like launch something. So the changes don't really need to go live until it goes direct. The thing is that when that happens, we're still kind of coming into like a new moon. So you can either wait until the moon's exalted in Taurus and it's coming into conjunction with Mercury to finalize this stuff on May 17th. Or you can wait until the new moon that we have in Taurus and then maybe wait for the moon to go into Cancer and sextile on the 22nd. So those would be the 2 dates that I would use to finalize some of the changes that you're going to be making. Keep in mind that the next eclipse that's going to be happening is on the 5th. It's going to be in Scorpio. That eclipse is in direct opposition to Mars, which is the ruler of your 8th house of change and resources. So I get the feeling that you have to go and change websites and emails and contact information. There may be documents and forms that you're creating. It may mean that you have to register something. It may mean also that there's a need to kind of work your mind around making some of these changes and like let go of any anxiety that you may have in regards to making some of these professional shifts. And I think it's great because for everybody, I mean, I think the secret sauce in this eclipse season is the retrograde. I mean, the retrograde is happening in direct opposition to the next eclipse. So we're being given almost like the breadcrumbs right now to make all of the physical changes that we need to make before we have some of the really dramatic kind of conclusions at the beginning of May. But I think that if you use this period appropriately, because it's going to trine your Pluto, you're going to feel more in control. And I also really like that it's going to be making sextiles directly to your 7th house, like making it possible for you to have new content or new things available, new services available. And I like that the retrograde is going right over your Mars. So it's kind of saying, how do I get into the flow of making change, even though, you know, Mars in Taurus likes to take its time. I spoke to 2 Mars and Tauruses today during sessions, and I kind of reiterated to both of them, like, look, you're about to have an eclipse in opposition to your Mars. You're going to feel like there's something coming that's pressuring you to move. It's going to feel uncomfortable, but to work with this Mercury retrograde and start proactively planning so that way you know just how much time you need. So give yourself, I think, maybe until mid-May to have a lot of this stuff finalized so you can kind of work through it at a steady pace, okay? Hopefully that's helpful for you, Mystic Road. I'm going to leave the queue open for 2 more minutes. So if you guys want to get in, I will leave it open for 2 more minutes. And now we can move to our other people. So Melissa, Rome, Maritza, and Amber, you guys are all on deck. What's up, Marcia? Happy Friday. So let me move to Melissa's chart. Melissa, October 6, 1979, 9:55 p.m. That gives you a Gemini rising, sun in Libra, and a moon in Taurus. And she says, solar eclipse live reading. I'm going to assume that you want me to take a look at where the eclipse is. It was very close to your natal moon. So I don't know how much you know about astrology, but I would also recommend going and looking at your lunar return. You can do that on astro.com, or if you have Astro software, you have a lunar return every month. It's when the moon comes back to where it was at your time of birth. As you may know, the eclipse that we had that took place on the 19th going into the 20th, it was at 29 degrees of Aries. So solar eclipses are new beginnings suddenly. Aries is about passion, and it's about action and bravery and jumping into something and needing to do it ourselves, putting ourselves first in some ways. You had this eclipse that was technically in your 11th house, which is about friendships. It is about some of your goals. It is about groups of other people, okay? And your participation in action with other people. Now, that eclipse was extra close by less than 2 degrees to your natal moon, which means it was bringing up themes revolving around security, money, resources, possessions, or maybe even just where you belong. Maybe you felt really emotionally, like a lot was coming up for you about your friends and about who you were close to or who you feel like, you don't have a connection to any longer. Maybe there was a lot of new financial goals coming up, or more focus on feeling more kind of connected to others and setting intentions in regards to just being more kind of social. This eclipse was not just intense because it was very close to your moon. The moon is the most sensitive part of the chart. But because you were born in the late 70s, you have planets that are in Libra. So in particular, you have a stellium of planets in Libra, Sun, Pluto, Venus, and Mercury. This eclipse was in opposition to Mercury, which is your chart ruler. So it does seem to kind of represent friends having things to say, talking to you, groups of people, wanting to connect with you. It could have materialized as parties and gatherings and get-togethers, but it also could have represented like challenges in communicating and being able to express yourself to others. They say when planets are at 29 degrees, it's like a crisis point. We call it an anaretic degree. I also find that they're very, people who have planets at 29 degrees, they're working through something karmically, and they can have like a lot of psychic sensitivity. They can be really kind of tapped in. So you have your Mercury at 29 degrees of Libra. I think that means that you read each other very well. I think that you read other people very well. Obviously, you're very creative, or there is this focus or fixation with all this Libra in the 5th in relationships with your creative projects, with your hobbies, with children, with romantic partners, with having fun. So just know that as a Libra, now the South Node eclipses are going to start really affecting you. You may not start to feel it until like July through November, but in July, the South Node is going to go into Libra, and it's going to sit conjunct your Mercury. On one hand, it can make you feel like you're losing your mind because Mercury is like your mental senses. On the other hand, there can be this like releasing and letting go, and like letting go of anxiety or letting go of stress. And then you'll watch the South Node swing through Libra and hit your Venus and your Pluto and your Sun. Being a Scorpio who's got a lot of planets in Scorpio, I've gone through these transits the last year and a half. The truth is, it's just like, there is something really magical about like learning to observe and not react to things, and learning to just kind of be like, I can't fight this, I have to let it go. So for some people, it's like saying goodbye to, a romantic partner or a lover. For other people, it's kids that, you know, fly the nest and they're getting older and they move out. It may mean that you lose some interest in some hobbies, but what you have to gain are all of the eclipses and the North Node's movement through your 11th house. So it's kind of taking away the energy from the focus on the self, putting it into the 11th house. So celebrating with other people, joining groups, right? Going and hanging out with friends, focusing on networking professionally, surrounding yourself with other people. And I can see that just with so many planets in the 5th house, there's a lot of my love affairs, my personal interests, my fun, my needs, my creativity, my happiness. And you're kind of getting outside of that with these eclipses and you're going into the 11th house. So this eclipse is kicking that off because in your astrology, you know, being a Gemini rising, Mercury is your most sensitive planet. So you're going to have this eclipse, or you had this eclipse in opposition to Mercury. I would see where there is maybe tension with others, or if you're having a difficult time communicating and talking about your feelings. This eclipse in particular was also intense because it was in a square to Pluto. So Pluto was going in and out of Aquarius. It's now going to retrograde back to Capricorn, and you've got Pluto square Mercury. So fear of change, fear of intimacy issues, transparency, you know, having some breakthroughs communication-wise in overcoming emotional pain or trauma in regards to self-expression, I think is a big thing. So Pluto is just majorly a focal point in the midst of this eclipse. It'll get reactivated again, and that'll be in mid-May when Jupiter hits that degree. And then it'll get reactivated again in July when the North Node hits that degree. And I guess the best advice I can give you is, you know, focus on having good people around you who are going to understand you and hear you. But also there is a sense of you going through a shift where it's not all about you. It's going to be about other people as well. So finding groups you can share with, especially if you're a creative or if you're a performer or if you're a parent, with all those planets in the 5th house, you need other people who are going to have similar interests. So there can be some sense of feeling supported from these groups of others. And you've got some other stuff going on too, but I think, you know, you may be going through some career changes as well. Saturn's going through your 9th house and it's about to hit your South Node. So there can be a sense of like needing to join groups online and doing some looking into new business connections and networking, or throwing your hat into the ring and putting it on some resume websites, and really trying to connect with other people. That can be really helpful for you throughout this transit, okay? Good luck, Melissa. I hope that's helpful. We're going to close the readings now. So if you have not gotten in, I got Abby and Jennifer. Then there we go. If you guys wanted a reading, all you had to do is scan the QR code. So if you have not scanned the QR code to make a donation, you can catch me next time. So let me see who else we've got here. So we have Rome. I'm assuming you just want to know about the eclipse. That eclipse was in your 1st house in opposition to Pluto. I imagine we're going to see a lot of people from like 79 to like 83 who are all getting hit by this eclipse. So for you, Rome, the eclipse was in Aries. Great time to be in Aries rising because it was in your 1st house of self. So even though it may have felt overwhelming, that exalted sun in the 1st house with the solar eclipse is really bringing all the energy and the attention back to you. So this is sparking the beginning process of you embarking over the next 2 years on the North Node transit through your 1st house, which is going to bring more focus to your body, your own personal direction, what you need, where you're going, okay? Personally, I kind of feel like I'm curious what happened, like if you had to cut someone or something off because it did make an opposition to your Pluto. There can be a sense of realizing that you need to put yourself first. I'm aware of where some of the eclipses are for the next like year or so. Like we're going to have a solar eclipse around 21 degrees of Libra in October. That's on your Saturn. We're going to have a 19-degree solar eclipse in Aries in the spring next year. That's in opposition to your Saturn. there's a lot of themes coming up that's highlighting your natal Saturn-Pluto, which is the burden of karmic responsibility and clearing out imbalances and toxicity in relationships. But also it's really highlighting that exalted Saturn, which is like, you know, when to say no, or when to find the balance, or when to, you know, call a spade if somebody's not being fair. So it's going to keep coming up through eclipses. And my advice is just pay attention to eclipse season in general, because the eclipses that we're going to have in the fall, right, when we have that solar eclipse, that's going to be right on top of your Saturn. I think it is going to be about career stuff, partnering with people, even professionally or romantically, but we're also going to see the completion and the conclusion when we see another eclipse that's going to be in your second house. It's basically self-preservation 101. I think I would say this to all Aries risings, Aries suns, and Aries moons. It really applies to everyone. I can't say it's one or the other. Definitely the Aries risings, though, having the North Node and the solar eclipses in your first house is like, what's going to give me the most freedom? How can I really express myself? How can I maintain my independence and my own sense of authority? And where am I going? What do I want? And it can express itself in a very extreme way, because Aries first house is getting angry, getting frustrated, you know, kind of, you know, sometimes lashing out. So the key here, I think, now that you have already had this solar eclipse, is to watch what happens and what actually gets cleared out during the lunar eclipse, which will be on May the 5th, 2023, just a couple weeks. That eclipse is going to be at 14 degrees, so it's going to be smack dab in between your Jupiter and your Mars. That is going to be about endings and completion and letting some things go. I do think that's also going to be shining a light on where you're cutting things out that were not financially or emotionally supporting you. I also have a feeling that you're going to really start growing, like big time, like an eclipse in the first house, right around the time that you get to like Leo season, July and August, you're really going to start to realize, like, you know what, I'm not going to second guess myself. Maybe I wasn't being selfish. Maybe that needed to happen. You know, maybe you felt bad about getting upset or angry at someone, but then you realize like it was self-preservation, right? Eclipses also that, you know, happen in the first house for an Aries rising Virgo sun. That eclipse was also in conjunct your sun. So there is a huge focus on your health, your body, your schedule, and what you do or do not have time for. And then he says, yeah, romance has been around me and I'm not used to that. It's like I have options now. Yeah. A lot of that's also Venus. So, you know, when you're having eclipses on your ascendant, it's bringing people to you, right? Because the first house is the self. So there might be more focus on the self. You're going to see that in the fall too when you have solar eclipses. And Saturn is coming into an opposition with Venus. So some people experience with that transit a sense of being like, where is love? There isn't enough love. I can't find anybody, or I'm not lovable, or love at a distance. Sometimes I've seen it manifest as people being like, yeah, there's people around, but I'm not interested. Like, I'm keeping a safe distance. So that can be happening for you right now. Saturn's in opposition to your moon, so there may be some, not resistance, but you might be like a little reluctant to just commit to just anyone, right? Strong positive Venus transits are going to manifest as new relationships, and I think that's going to continue actually, because you're going to see Jupiter go into Taurus, and when Jupiter goes into Taurus in May, you know, it's going to go from 0 to 15 degrees all year. So it's going to be in your second house, building self-esteem, building money, building resources, but it's going to start coming into a trine with your moon and also your Venus. So you're going to find that there's more opportunity for you to bring in work, to meet people, you know, out, maybe even at the gym. Your self-esteem is really growing. Like by the time you're getting into Leo season, you're going to be like, yeah, I made the right decision. That's some very rising stuff. Yeah. Well, Jupiter being in the first house, it's wanting to enhance the body, right? Make things bigger. Muscles is actually going to be more in regards to Mars. So, you know, you no longer have Saturn square Mars. You don't have Jupiter opposed Mars yet. You may do that off and on for the next year. I would just be mindful that when Jupiter is in the later degrees of Taurus next year and it opposes Mars, it could have some effects on your body. It can have some effects on your thyroid or your reproductive organs. So you may be like, I'm going to scale back on that. Just watch when Jupiter's hitting closer to about 24 to 29 degrees next year. That's probably when there's going to be some changes. But for right now, you know, the solar eclipse is like, how do I look? How do I feel? You know, what do I want to do? And the first house is the first thing you do up when you get up in the morning. So I don't know if you set a schedule or a routine, if you're getting up at the same time, if you get up and you eat at the same time, if you work out at the same time, but the mornings are your time, okay? And you're going to get a lot done in the morning if you're willing to kind of do that. And you have a night chart. So I think that even though you may not feel like you're getting into the swing of things until later in the day, make the most of your mornings and especially get up and start kind of moving your body. With Jupiter being there, it can be as simple as getting up, doing some yoga, you know, stretching. It can be doing some mantras. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but the intentions that you're setting first thing in the morning are going to have a pretty strong positive effect on you. And you're going to see more, like I said, July, August, why you had to make some of the changes that you had to make. And also, like, relationships are very much a thing, right? Having Jupiter trine Venus all year is great because there's going to be a multitude of options, but it'll be people in other places because Jupiter rules your ninth. And you're also going to find that, you know, once Saturn comes into an opposition with Venus, in this next year, I'm not going to say you're not going to be open to dating, but you're going to be very, very consumed with work and stability with work and consistency with work and responsibility. And you're not just going to feel like you're making sacrifices to be in a relationship with somebody because you don't want to be alone. So this whole year, it's about creating structure until you get to that point. So if you are feeling like you need to prioritize other things, you know, you can, and then you're going to realize like a relationship is going to be there if it's the right person. And if there's somebody kind of throwing their weight around and causing some problems, it's not going to interfere with my health or with my, you know, process or the direction that I'm going or my routine. So it might sound selfish, but for Aries risings and Aries moons, this is definitely something that's like really helpful for them right now. The assertiveness is going to come through pretty strong with the Jupiter transits and the eclipses. Okay, stick with the routine. It looks nice, and it's finally we've got a lot of planets now out of your 12th house. So the next couple months is just building on finances, really focusing on how to get things in order there, and feeling like a little bit more grounded and situated with your home life. That's really where things are going. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Rome. Thank you for joining. I've got Maritza, Amber, Laura. Maritza. August 25th, 84, 9:47 p.m. Curious if June 15th, 2023 is a good astrology date for cosmetic surgery in breast or tummy area. If not, what would be some good dates to consider after that date? I have an intercepted chart, so I'm confused looking at placidus versus whole, but resonate with both sometimes. I even considered the sidereal astrology when trying to come up with good surgery dates. Okay, so breast and tummy, so that's going to be more Cancer. And you want to do June 15th. All right, so let's take a look. All right, so on June 15th, we're going to have Mars. That's going to be conjunct your moon, so that's great for stomach and breasts. We are going to have Mars coming out of a square with your natal Saturn. Mars is no longer in a square with Jupiter or Uranus, and the moon is going to be technically in Taurus. So here's the deal. I don't know what time zone you're in, but honestly, I'm not wild about having harsh aspects between like the moon and Mars if you're going to be having surgery. Okay, so I see that on the 15th. Let me pull up a calendar so I can see. Okay, so that would be a Thursday. I feel like we can pick a better day, but I'm also going to say this. Mars is going to sit on your moon, which wouldn't be a bad time for surgery, but then it's going to start coming into a square with Uranus. All right, so that's something else that we don't want to do. So I would say something like when Mars is out of a square with Uranus, and maybe like a trine to your natal Neptune. And maybe we can do something like the moon in Sagittarius. So obviously we're pushing this out now, but I go based off of the exact days. So the first isn't a bad option. However, we have Venus square Uranus, that's fine. But that's going to be, July 1st is going to be a Saturday. So then Sunday, Monday's the 3rd. So I wonder if there's going to be people doing surgery. Moon in Capricorn, quincunx your moon. Also not thrilled about that. So we could do something like the moon in Aries. And that's not bad because you're going to have trines to your Venus, and Mars is coming in conjunction with your sun. And this is before the Venus retrograde. So now we're looking closer to the 10th of July. Moon trine Venus. Venus is on your moon. It's also going to trine Neptune. It's technically in your 9th. We don't have any oppositions or squares to Saturn. The moon's not squaring Pluto. If you do this earlier in the day, it'll be after the moon comes out of the square with the sun, and it's going to make a trine to Venus. So if you're very particular about, you know, when you want to do it, this would be a better date. In my opinion, and Mars trines the North Node. So it might be a little bit longer than you want to wait, but this would be better. I'll caution you and tell you that if you want to do this anytime beyond this date, that from the second half of July to the beginning of September, Venus will be retrograde. So Venus is already in the shadow period here. You can do it, okay? And I think the aspects are fine. But I would not recommend doing this too much later than this date because Venus is going to retrograde over your moon, and the moon does deal with breasts. And yeah, there's that. How much earlier in the day? I mean, this is set for 7:45 Central Time, so it would be 8:45. So it would be the morning. So you could go in and do a morning procedure if that's what you wanted to do. Especially as the moon is in the 12th house of resting, and then it's going to come into contact with your North Node and your ascendant. I think it's fine. But yeah, if you decide to wait later, you're really looking at waiting until the second half of September. I wouldn't do it during the retrograde. And equally, know that Venus is going to retrograde over your moon. Okay, so that tells me that even after you get the surgery, as you're recovering, you're going to be recovering during a Venus retrograde. So maybe part of Venus coming into conjunction with your moon is like the swelling has gone down, you know, bruising has gone down, and you're like, okay, I think I can kind of start to see the results. Do I like it? You have to really give yourself a month because from an astrological perspective, it's probably not going to be until about mid-August that you're going to be like, do I like this or do I not like this? I'm kind of neutral. I think Venus retrograde over the moon and with the sun there, I think you're going to realize like, yeah, okay, you know, it just took a little bit longer for me to see the results. I'm aware that Uranus is going to square this Venus retrograde. So there may be a sense of the effects of post-surgery, just it's so different. Like if you're going from having like a, you know, a B or a C cup to having like, you know, double G's or something. I mean, it's Jupiter and Uranus square. This is going to be like a radical appearance change. So if you're looking to be like, oh, I don't want any tummy, small waist, you know, a bigger chest, it's going to be very obvious that there has been a change. I wonder if it's like a lot all at one time, and it's going to be about wrapping your head around just the fact that you have a new body and how you dress your body, right? How your body actually looks. It's also in the 5th house, so you may feel like, well, I'm a little weird about dating, or, you know, like people see me with my clothes off and I'm not really comfortable with that, or really taking pictures or showing that until the mid-August period. I wouldn't be worried about the shadow period per se. I feel like Okay. There we go. Sorry, guys. So Maritza, if you're still there, like I said, that would be the time to do it. And if not, then you're definitely looking at having to wait, I would say, until after the Mercury retrograde and after the Venus retrograde. So then you're looking at waiting probably until closer to what's going to be the second half of September. So if you need another date, I would say, you know, come back then if that's something that you want to take a look at. And you'll start to see the issues with the shadow period in advance. So let's say you go and you try to find surgeons and you're going back and forth and you're doing like the, pre kind of appointments. I would ask them, like, can you take a photo of me and show me what the results might look like if I do a breast augmentation and if I do something to my tummy? And see if you like what they show you. I would actually try to see if somebody can generate something, especially with the squares to Uranus and your ascendant. I feel like that can be a way of somebody visually showing you how your body could change, right? Hopefully that's helpful for you, Maritza. Good luck. It's always fun picking surgery dates for people and having to explain to them that they may have to wait longer for better results sometimes, but it is what it is. We've got Amber, Laura, Magic Lotus, and then Robert. So we'll take Amber next. Gotta love Mercury retrograde, right, guys? It's because the moon's there as well. It's been a funky breakdown week, huh? All right, so we have Amber here. Amber says, solar eclipse, what do I need to know to make the best of this energy? February 25th, 82, 12:50 p.m. So Cancer rising, sun in Pisces, and your moon is in Aries. Wow, so you've got Saturn on your sun, and you just had an eclipse that was in opposition to Mercury. So depending on how we look at it, Mercury is in your 5th house, but whole sign 4th, Cancer rising. I wonder if with the eclipse in opposition to your Pluto and Jupiter in opposition to your Pluto, if you're just being presented with so many opportunities to just go through a change or a transformation. And you might be like, hi, I'm sick of the lessons. Pluto's still hovering around your Venus. So there's something changing about relationships. There's something changing about intimacy. There's something changing about home life. And that eclipse squared Pluto right on top of your Venus. Pluto's going to retrograde back, hit it a little bit more this year, and then it's going to be gone. So I'm wondering what came up. Was it needing to make changes and letting go of the past? Was it needing to make home changes? Was it kind of like a meeting of the minds with a family member or a roommate? Something like that could have or should have come up. And Jupiter right now is actually squaring the nodes and your Pluto. So you're at a pivotal moment where you're deciding whether or not you want to move into the future or you want to get stuck in the past. And for somebody who has a stellium of planets in your 4th house all retrograde, you know what it's like to get stuck in the past, right? Past relationships, past family drama, past due, living in certain places you shouldn't be living. So here comes Jupiter now sliding into your 11th house, which is saying like there is a need to surround yourself with good friends and people who are also going to encourage you and incentivize you to want to take control, right? To be assertive. New opportunities for your career, new opportunities to be meeting some of your goals. So really, I think that when there's opportunities or when there's oppositions, there's opportunities. Jupiter in opposition to Pluto is not fun though. You may be getting some tough love from some partnerships or maybe even from some family members, and that can be challenging to deal with, but I really feel like this is temporary. Maybe you're feeling it really between now and like May, once Jupiter kind of passes that eclipse degree. I also feel like this might be about going and joining groups or associations or, joining groups online or people who might be more motivating. So whether you're watching motivational speakers or maybe you're joining groups where, that's the focus on bettering the self. It can also be about health. It can be about fitness because of Jupiter's connection to your 6th house. Maybe it's just about, making sure that you're getting things done. So it can also be about groups and opportunities to learn how to be more efficient, right? So organized, getting more work done, sticking to a routine. You want to be surrounding yourself with these kind of people right now. The truth is that for everybody from the late 70s, early 80s, you know, these eclipses are ushering you guys into, you know, astrological, like karmic lessons that you have all have ingrained in your charts. If you have Saturn in conjunction to Pluto, there is some heavy karma and responsibility revolving around relationships. So as the eclipses happen and then the nodes swing into Libra, you have the opportunity over the next couple months to let it all go. So if it's finally forgiving relatives for wrongdoings, if it's finally healing from previous, you know, broken hearts and relationships, if it's finally cleaning your house out, if it's finally moving on from, you know, dysfunctional family relationships, these are all things you're dealing with over the next several months, okay? They're gonna get highlighted again in October. So it might mean that this is just the beginning process of this, but when October swings around and you have a solar eclipse there mid-month, it's also going to be, you know, putting the pressure on changing things emotionally or within your home or maybe even moving. But I don't want to overwhelm you. You know, right now I think this eclipse at the top part of your chart is really kind of suggesting it's time to be so focused on your goals that you're not willing to let anyone or anything get in the way. And this need now to kind of pick up and move on from the past. So just be really gentle with yourself, you know, and try to surround yourself with people that are going to kind of support you through this period, because you are literally making the decision to kind of move on. Now, when the South Node is done going through your Pluto and your Saturn and your Mars, which is going to be around about February of next year, I'm not going to say it's over, but you're more so in the clear, right? Pluto will be off your Venus. The South Node's going to be off of your Saturn and your Pluto. You know, anybody who's got Saturn in the fourth, that's a difficult placement to have. And Saturn and Pluto and Mars in the fourth house, there's an interesting story about, you know, like relationships and your upbringing and the experience that you've had in relationships and what you've seen. And I have a theory that, you know, people who have Saturn in the fourth house, they have an opportunity or they have the privilege to break old karmic patterns when it comes to home and family. Now, in your case, it's home, family, and relationships. So I think you're going through that like kind of curse breaking period. And you just need a lot of support from other people as you go through that. So be mindful that it's not limited to just relationships. It can be relatives. It can even be about cleaning your house out. So just show up. That's really what this is about. And get ready for the next eclipse that's about to be in Scorpio. It's going to be very close to your natal Jupiter. So I think that you're getting ready to kind of realize that it all comes down to valuing and loving and taking care of yourself and focusing on what makes you happy and kind of saying like, okay, forget the rest, you know, like nothing else really matters. This is what I have to really focus on. Hopefully that's helpful. Good luck. We've got Laura and then Magic Lotus. All right, so Laura says September 26, 78, 3:01 p.m. I would like to move, but it's expensive out here. Do you see me moving? If so, when? Or should I stay where I'm at? I have a surgery scheduled for June 26th, so I'll be down for about 3 weeks after that. That adds another layer to the mix. Okay, so hi Laura. So I'm sure you heard some of the stuff that I was talking about in regards to surgery and surgical procedures. Moving and movement. So in general terms, you know, by Placidus standards, your fourth house is Taurus. And so, you know, you're getting ready to see that the retrograde there is like, am I moving? Am I not moving? Am I changing directions? I feel like you got to wait this Mercury retrograde out. There may be some information or some awareness about what you can or cannot swing, especially financially, right around the end of April when you have the Sun Mercury Cazimi. I think you're going to realize that you do need to move, but it's not quite the time yet. I also feel like moving is going to be a lot easier when Jupiter is fully in your Placidus fourth house. So you can look while Mercury is retrograde. But as soon as Jupiter shows up and maybe you have some support from Venus, like when Venus is on your moon, You might have a woman help you, or you might have a woman say like, oh, hey, there's a place that's for rent next door, check it out. Or a friend might say that to you, it's possible. And that would be around the beginning of June. The problem is in a perfect world, that's a great transit, right? Venus on the moon, helping find a home, square the nodes, and Jupiter in the 4th house. But Venus and Pluto will oppose, and it's going to square the nodes. So even if there's a lead, it looks like it may be later on. Then we're going to have Venus come out of that square with the nodes. So another option for moving would probably be when we see Venus come to the late degrees and maybe like Mars hits Saturn. So possibly the second half of July, although Venus will be retrograde. So one thing you want to take into consideration is that if you are moving the second half of July or in August with your 4th house lord being retrograde, the 8th house might be unexpected expenses. So maybe you go to sign the lease and they're like, we want a pet deposit, plus we want a regular deposit, plus you need to have renter's insurance. Like there may be unexpected fees that kind of come with moving. I would really recommend not doing it during the retrograde. So if you can do it the first half of July, that would be better. If you can't swing it, then I would wait until after you have that Mercury retrograde in your 8th, where you've assessed your resources. Maybe there's a situation where somebody cuts you a deal on rent, or you end up moving into a place that's joint with another person because the 8th house is other people's money. You may be able to go and take a look at a house and offer, show up and move in immediately. If you want to buy something, I would not recommend buying anything. I mean, Jupiter's going to be in your 4th house clear until next year. And Saturn's going to be in your 2nd house. So Saturn's taking on the responsibility of, finances, but you're going to have a Venus retrograde in the 8th and you're going to have Mercury retrograde in the 8th. I would not recommend buying a house before the summertime. I think the longer that you wait, the better. If you have the time and if you're capable of waiting, you're probably going to do a lot better and you're going to get more bang for your buck if you're waiting until October. When Venus comes into a trine with your natal Jupiter, this will be the end of October through when it trines Uranus and it's on your north node, the beginning of November. That would be a better time. But also just economically, like I'm not a financial advisor. I have to tell people that, but things, because of the eclipse that's going to happen in May, are going to get a little bit more dire economically. And I can see that, the nodes are coming into a square with your Mercury and your Sun and also your Pluto. So in the 9th house, it might be about you contemplating or considering, do I stay in my area or do I move further away? Right? And with Jupiter going into your 4th house, you're going to want a bigger home and you're going to want to have like some land or, some outdoor space. And I would just say, consider, how much bang for your buck you're going to get. You are having some wonderful transits that would be great for like moving further away. If that's something that you decide to do, like, the astrology kind of supports you doing that. You may feel that because of the squares though that are taking place with the Jupiter transit and some other stuff, that you're limited based off of where you're working. So I don't know your work situation. Eventually down the road, when the South Node goes into the earlier degrees of Libra, there will be some changes in that department next year. So if you're limited by where you're potentially living or moving because of work, I would say don't let that be the only thing that keeps you from moving. And I would wait until the end of October, beginning of November, before I would even remotely consider buying or moving. I would definitely wait. During the retrogrades in your 8th, you may go and qualify for like a better interest rate also. So if you're really serious about looking, maybe you'll have more debt paid off by then. Maybe you'll be able to go and, take a look at what you could qualify for. Maybe you're going to have even better, credit. But I think I would definitely wait until that period. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Just know you got Jupiter in your 4th house all year. So there is plenty of time. All right, so we've got Magic Lotus. And that was May 16th, 1986, 5:29 p.m., New York, New York. I want to know how to best maximize this boost to my business and travel more this year. Okay, cool. Good question. So, being a Libra rising, you got a couple things kind of working in your favor. Okay, so first of all, you've got Jupiter coming into your 7th house. Okay, the 7th house is your marketplace, whether it's clients or services or things that you offer. Jupiter going in there tells me that you're getting ready to like announce and tell people like, hey, this is what I've got going on. This is what I offer. Jupiter rules your 3rd house of communication. So I think of like updating websites and social media and creating videos and campaigns and things that you can be posting is definitely the way to go. Also, I think if you have a business that's not just online, that's something that might be local, you can definitely drum up some business locally. 2 is you're also seeing that you just had an eclipse on your North Node in the 7th house, ruled by Mars, and Mars is in the 3rd house. So it's kind of doubling down on what I just said, the work that you're putting into driving more traffic to your business, getting recognition for what you're doing. So campaigns, social media, promotion, putting stuff out there so people can see what you've got going on. When Jupiter crosses your North Node, I do anticipate there is going to be this growth period where there's going to be a lot more people coming in and interested in what you have to offer. So that's going to be mid-May. And then you're going to see that you're going to have your North Node return in July. So May through July, it's kind of on like Donkey Kong. The only challenge that I see is that it will square Pluto kind of right on the IC. It's like on the brink of your 4th house. So it might mean that you're having to learn how to communicate in a different way. It might mean that you're contemplating moving or that you have to learn more about a new social media platform. You have to figure out like a new way of using software or something to kind of like really expand and get your content out there. It can mean that there's some crisis going on in the home front with a family member or a relative and you're super focused at work, but there's all this stuff going on in your private life and emotionally that's just very overwhelming. That's more general. So I would say that to any Libra rising, that even though the astrology is kick-ass for relationships and clients with transits in your 7th house, and really great because you're going to have a lot of planets go through your 10th house in your career, really what the 4th house teaches you is that if there's some foundational issues emotionally or in your private life or with your home or your family, it can threaten the foundation of everything else. So as a Libra rising myself, I'm telling you to really pay attention because when the nodes come into square Pluto, whether it's obviously touch on wood, a crisis at home, a family death, needing to move, issues with a partner, there's going to be things that are going to come about, especially having Pluto conjunct a very sensitive point in your chart that can totally disrupt everything that you got going on at work. So don't just work through things, really be paying attention to your emotions and what's going on in the home front so you can avert any of these issues. Partnerships, relationships, connecting and collaborating with other people. Ask clients for feedback. Ask them to give you reviews. Ask them if they will refer you to other people. Be willing to collaborate with other professionals. Put yourself out there. Try to do interviews, talk to people, share, teach, explore, all that stuff with Jupiter in your 7th house. Over the summertime, you're going to see Venus, your chart ruler, go retrograde in Leo. What you're going to hear for Libra risings is that it's going retrograde through your 11th house, that friends may come back to you, maybe, but in your chart, it's going to go retrograde fully in your 10th, which means if there is going to be something changing in direction with your career and shifting for better or worse, it will be happening at the end of July through the beginning of September. Now, this is the time I would watch. It's not a time to take on a new business partnership. It's not a time to try to launch a new business. It's a time to really just kind of see how things go. The fact that Venus will retrograde in conjunction to Mercury makes me feel inclined to tell you a friend might approach you and see if you want to do some work together or collaborate. Venus will then retrograde and come into a square with Uranus, so there can be some friction going on perhaps with a client. That'll be right around the beginning of August, and then it's going to go retrograde and it's going to square Jupiter. This is a very loud Venus retrograde because of the squares that we're going to see to Uranus and Jupiter. We're going to see a lot of people across the board have a lot of breakups. I don't like saying that. There's going to be a lot of drama because it's going to be in the sign of Leo and it's going to square Jupiter, so it's going to magnify the situation. For you, I would just say be careful who you're partnering with and be mindful that both your 7th and your 10th house is becoming very activated. So you're going to be very seen. Even though you're Libra rising, you may want to read the horoscope for Scorpio rising during this transit, because it's going to talk about the changes in relationships and how that's going to affect your career. So if you're somebody who's single, it's going to be easier to navigate. You might find the best people to work with. You might bring in a really prominent client, or somebody who you end up doing some kind of work with. But my advice is just really connect with people. I mean, all roads through some of your transits right now in your 7th house lead back to the 3rd. And that's just doing the work to connect and put yourself out there and really focus on promoting your services. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Lotus. So I've got Rob, Deanna, Juliana. I've got, Varnish. I don't remember your name. I'm gonna have to look in a second. Abby, and then Jennifer. So gonna take a time out. I have to put these charts in. So if you guys want to give me a minute, I'll do that. You guys can grab something to drink or grab a snack. And then we will pick back up with the rest of these readings. And who was that? You, Abby? Were you? I can't remember who was Varnish. Just so I have the right name. Let me know. Okay, what's your first name? Jasmine. Okay, thanks, Jasmine. $527.92. Richmond, Virginia. Abby, I did not get your info. If you did not send that, please send that. Okay, well, you got to send it to me. You guys got to put that in the memo. Otherwise, everybody ends up waiting, so you can send it to me unless it's somehow found by the moderator. Let's see. Hey D, I did not see you get in, so you just missed the cutoff. There we go. Cool. Thank you. All right, cool. So let's get everybody in here. Gotcha. And looks like we're going to have Robert first, and then Deanna and Juliana. You guys are on deck. So let me pull up Robert's chart. Ben says, what's your favorite placement on your birth chart? Probably my Uranus-Venus conjunction. Keeps things interesting. All right, so let's get Rob. What's up, Rob? Okay, so for you, I've got 5983, Dallas, Texas. How good or bad is it? Rob! You want a beating? Oh, man. Good or bad is all relative. It's how you look at it, you know? You've got some interesting stuff going on here, my dude. I think probably the big thing is not even just so much the eclipse, but you know that Uranus is coming back in for the last hit for your sun. Okay, so that's going to kind of shake things up. It's all about change and transformation and how you're moving through some stuff. Also, the Mercury retrograde is just short of the conjunction to your sun, so it tells me that you're working through something in regards to intimacy, fear, death, regeneration, learning to let something go. You know, Mercury is your 12th house ruler, so there's some sense of like overcoming something. And yeah, you had an eclipse that was in direct opposition to your Saturn. So to me, it looks like there's been a lot of hashing something out with other people. Whether it's people that you're living with, or it's relatives, or it's kind of, you know, it's, once again, I said we were going to see a lot of people from 1981 and 1983 because the eclipses are in opposition to your Pluto and your Saturn. So if you've got Pluto, Saturn in the first house, you can be really fixated on controlling your environment or your body, or just, you know, feeling like you need to have kind of your guard up. So with that eclipse happening with Jupiter in your 7th house, I would assume you're kind of getting some feedback, or you're getting some pushback from some other people. And with Mercury retrograde in your sign, there's a lot of like, do I say something? Do I not say something? Do I take a step back? Do I keep to myself? Do I silently suffer? You know, I think that by the time the retrograde's over, mid-month, you're probably going to realize why certain friendships had to end, or why certain financial situations kind of came up, or why you had to hash something out with someone. But I don't necessarily think it's bad. I just know that shit's kind of getting real, especially as Pluto goes retrograde and it's going to square your Saturn. I mean, to be honest with you, I look at this and I go, now is the moment where you're asking yourself, what do I want to change? And what am I afraid of cutting off or losing? By the time the North Node comes into square Pluto, and it's also square your natal Saturn, July may be when you really rip off the bandage. You know, for a lot of Libra risings, I've been telling people there's something that's brewing either on the home front, or there's something that's brewing in regards to your private life that is going to bring up challenges with your career and your relationships. Okay, it is inevitable. It doesn't have to be bad, but when we start to see these squares happen in July and in August, inevitably you're going to have to hash things out. Having the North Node in your 7th house means there is open conflict with other people, right? Now, the last 10 degrees in your 7th house is about partnership. So people start coming in. But what you've been experiencing for the last year with Jupiter in your 7th house, and also, you know, Aries season, is there's been conflict with other people. So what's going to happen now is like counselors, therapists, astrologers, new partners, new clients all start kind of funneling in. I would just say if something's a problem, make it bigger. And with Pluto moving through your 4th house, coming into a square with Saturn, I think it's about home. I think it's about money. I think it's about possessions. And I wonder if there's just some challenges going on with like relationships right now. You know, it's kind of funny to have all that Libra in your chart and then have a 7th house Aries moon. There can be a sense of being too accommodating, too flexible, too understanding, too generous, too giving with other people. And what you're going to feel is that your Aries moon is going to start kicking in, and you're going to be like, fuck no. my moon's in Aries at 22 degrees, and that's definitely what's coming up. So just a word to the wise, the closer that the North Node and the eclipses get to your moon, the more that you're going to be willing to kind of have it out with people. And I'm not encouraging that. I'm just letting you know it's going to be hard to kind of keep a lid on it. I think what's working in your favor is that you do have Saturn right now that is still in a trine to your Venus all year. So you're realizing you're doing it because you're protecting your peace. You're doing it because you're protecting your career. You're doing it because you're protecting the relationship with yourself. So that's the one thing that's working in your favor, right? But you got a lot of stuff going on with Venus. Saturn trine Venus is supportive. Pluto quincunx Venus is uncomfortable. And I wonder what's going on either internally or emotionally that's kind of, you know, making you hold back. This is the last pass with Uranus on your sun. Watch the caffeine, watch anything that's going to be like stimulating, that's going to kind of send you over the edge. And by the time it passes your sun, it's going to keep moving forward. And then it's going to come for your Mercury. So watch for just mental stress. There can definitely be a lot of mental stress that's kind of coming up for you, but there is an opportunity if you're taking time to kind of rest, recuperate, and reflect to like have this constant streamline of connection, you know, to the ethers. City Love says, Mom's Libra rising just went through a divorce, finding her freedom, blessings are coming her way. See? So it really depends on what it is that you have going on, Rob, but I would say if you reflect on what happened in 2020 when Saturn was coming in and out of the square with your Saturn and your Pluto, maybe there was this awareness that there were some things in your, you know, in your private life or within your family or your home that wasn't working, right? Or a living situation that wasn't working. Now Jupiter is going to oppose that and it's going to square. So partners can be coming in and they can be offering you the gift of relationship, but you have to get out of the past. You have to get out of your comfort zone. Or there is a need to address things that are kind of bothering you privately. But yeah, there's some really interesting stuff that's going on. I would just say you'll be stoked at the end of this year as Saturn really fully starts to more so move into Aquarius. It'll no longer be squaring things. And my interpretation is that maybe there's been some reluctance to moving forward and being in a relationship or living with somebody or having a shared space. But people are going to start showing up very quickly asking you why or when or how or if you can. And you're going to be finding that you're like running out of excuses or you're running out of reasons why you can't do those things. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Rob. Good luck through those transits. Report back to us and let us know how it goes. All right. So I do have D or Deanna. Looks like you did get in there. There we go. December 13th, 76. Will my finances improve enough so I can make increased mortgage payments this year? With inflation, the interest rates shot up so much that the new monthly payments are going up $1,000 more. I have to renew terms now. A mortgage renewal deadline is the 23rd. Okay. So here's the deal. Mortgages are more the 6th house, and money owed is more the 8th house. Okay, so you've got Saturn that's straddling the line. Saturn rules your 6th house of mortgages. It's going into the 8th where you're realizing like, okay, I owe a lot more and I need to make some kind of change here. Your finances improving, the money that you possess, is your 2nd house, which is ruled by Mercury. So something that we've kind of got going on right now is Mercury is now retrograding through the 10th. So I would just look at that transit and go, okay, you're asking yourself, how can I make more money? Do I try to see if I can get a raise? Do I look at trying to find a better paying job? Do I go and talk to a boss about, trying to move to a different department? Any of these things could happen. Mercury is in opposition to Uranus. So I think that there's some stress revolving around talking to your family about this, or talking to a partner about this, or talking to roommates about this. I don't know your situation, but if there's other people involved in this, there's some stress. A Mercury retrograde, because Mercury rules your 2nd house, can the direction in your finances change? Yes, they can. However, I don't know if much is going to change until you see maybe like the Sun and Jupiter coming together, which will be right around May 12th. When Mercury goes direct and it comes into conjunction with Jupiter, which is actually like, that's an indication that you could be making more money, or you get a raise, or you do qualify for a new position. That's around June the 5th. And then you're going to see Mercury actually trine your moon. So by about the beginning of June, can things get better? Yes. But I personally feel like, okay, cool. Trying to do virtual work and renting out your rooms. I would say either or. Like if you're looking to do virtual work with Mercury going through your 10th house conjunct Uranus, you will find something. It is very likely that you will find something that you can do on your own terms. And I think that's a great idea, actually, because it's going to trine your natal Mercury. So you can work it around your schedule. I would start there, because I think you'd be surprised how much extra cash you can make, especially if you don't want to feel like you have somebody living in your house. I feel like your chart seems to suggest that you're going more the direction of trying to figure out what other business you can drum up rather than moving somebody in. But if you're okay with that, that's fine. You're also going to find that there's going to be another period that is going to be really positive for bringing in more money. And that's going to probably be the time where you feel like you can start paying more of your mortgage off. And I think that's going to be the end of July. When Mars goes into your 2nd house and it starts coming into a trine with your midheaven and Jupiter from the beginning of August, pretty much all the way through September, that's another really great period where I do think you're going to make more money. Mercury will retrograde over your moon in the 2nd house, which means you're going back and making a change to what you're paying for your mortgage. So that's going to be right around the end of August. So if you don't want to share your space with people, maybe go and pick up a couple like gigs that you can do virtually or remotely. I think that you're going to be focusing on saving a little bit of money. Give yourself until the end of August, beginning of September, and it looks like you'll use the retrograde to go back and decide that you're paying more money off on your mortgage. There is a process to all of this, right? Also, there's going to be another process of you deciding whether or not you might want to kind of skip what you're doing altogether and try to go and work for yourself more independently by the beginning of the year. You may surprise yourself like by how lucrative that could potentially be, with Jupiter and Uranus being in your 10th house. And next year, you're going to have your Jupiter return. So you'll have to reevaluate if it's worth it, if you're going to be okay, not having the benefits and the kind of the creature comforts that you get from a full-time paying job. But I could definitely see either, in the new year or spring of 2024, considering making a change. But once again, give yourself to the end of August, the beginning of September. By then, you'll be able to start paying more of your mortgage off. Looks like as Pluto gets closer and closer to your Venus, your goal is to try to figure out how to, pay the house off really like over the next 10 years or so. Hopefully that's helpful. Congrats on coming up with a plan. I think with Jupiter and Uranus being in your 10th house, like you're going to find that there's going to be some real breakthrough opportunities in your career, and there's just going to be continued growth. So that's just going to keep going. I do really want to get into real estate and be a broker, but I'm not sure if I'll make it. Well, Taurus rules your midheaven, and the ruler is Venus, and you've got Venus in the 6th. So having clients and things like that could work. A broker, I mean, when Mercury goes retrograde over your moon, I would say in September, you can reevaluate if it's worth making an investment into possibly starting a program. That's definitely doable. I've got Juliana. I didn't see a question, so do you want me to just talk to you about the eclipse? February 28th, 1969, 11:48 a.m. Chicago. Cancer rising, sun in Pisces, and the moon is in Cancer. You're welcome, Dee. So next up we have, after this, Jasmine, Abby, and Jennifer. Juliana, are you there? Is there anybody out there? Thank you, City Love. You're our cheerleader tonight. Everybody needs that. You're the hype man. All right, so let's talk about this eclipse then, shall we? So, general. Okay, so we'll talk about the eclipse. So the eclipse was in your 11th house. It was 29 degrees in your 11th. Relatively close to your Saturn and your Venus. So I think it is highlighting like the commitments and the emotional connections and the relationships you have with other people. You might be finding yourself drawn towards collaborating with other women or women's groups. That can definitely be a theme here. I'm also kind of digging the fact that Saturn is still in your 9th house. So I see that you mentioned spiritual. You know, for a Cancer rising, Saturn going through your 9th house is a time where mentors, teachers, gurus come into your life. Okay, so you may learn something new. I've seen a lot of people decide they want to take up yoga, or they want to learn astrology, or they want to start kind of questioning their purpose, and they go on like this like spiritual quest while Saturn goes through their 9th house. Any of these things can be happening for you. You've got some other stuff going on besides that, but I think that before Saturn dips into your 10th house, there is opportunity for people to come in that are going to inspire you or teach you or help you lead. Once you get to mid-May, Saturn is going to hit 6 degrees. It's going to sit at a position that's called your MC. So this is the tip-top part of your chart. It's the highest part of the chart. And Saturn is about commitment, responsibility, timing, you know, growth, devotion. It's about maturity, basically. You only have this transit once every 28, 29 years. So if you go back and you look at 1993, 1994, 1995, and you reflect on what was going on then, you were in like your mid-30s, this was like a total kind of grow up period when it comes to your career. On top of that, you also had Saturn then hit your sun. So there was a lot of figuring out your purpose, who you are, how to put yourself out in the world, become an adult, support yourself. These were the themes. So having Saturn hit an angle, having Saturn hit your sun, those are two very big transits that just happen to coincide. And I think a lot of it for you, yeah, it can be about finances and security and material possessions. It can, because the sun is the whole sign ruler of your 2nd house of money. But I think it's about maybe trying to find a way to redefine yourself professionally in a position that feels very spiritually in alignment. If you want to teach, if you want to publish, if you want to travel, if you want to share, if you want to become the mentor or the guide, these may all be things that really appeal to you. Especially having your sun at a 9, it's like a very Sagittarian type of degree. So there's something that you share with the world, like your vision or your belief. Saturn does slow things down. So there is a sense of teaching us about quality versus quantity. So there may be a sense of you feeling like it's taking longer to get some of these things up and running, or it's taking longer to see some of the results this year, but that doesn't mean it's not working. You'll find that Saturn's going to come into contact with your sun in the beginning of next year, and then, you know, Saturn's going to pass your sun and continue to go through your 5th house. So this may be the year that you travel, you learn, you find yourself, you develop your beliefs, and you start putting something together that may ultimately end up being more lucrative down the road next year. I think that goes hand in hand with the eclipses and also Jupiter going through your 11th house. Clearly, there's some kind of karma relating to women. If you have Saturn that is debilitated in the sign of Aries, and it is conjunct Venus in the 11th house. So there is a real focus right now, these next couple months, in developing some really core relationships, I think, with women. And it may be networking, it may just be friends. These may be older women or women who end up kind of like having a lot of like life experience. Maybe this is about you shifting away from being around people who just want to kind of have a good time, or they're more useful to people who are kind of more doing their work out in the world and out in society. Women's groups would be really good for you the next couple of months as you go through some of these, Jupiter and nodal transits, friends and community. But these are going to be like stronger women, and focusing on developing and nurturing some of those relationships because Saturn rules your 7th. Something else I would watch for is you're also going to see Saturn then retrograde back into your 9th house. So it'll drop back into your 9th house right around the end of July. And then it's going to stay in your 9th house really for quite some time. So it'll be there from the end of July, and it won't come back into your 10th house and hit your midheaven until about the end of January. So July until the beginning of the year might be reevaluating your beliefs, working on something you're teaching, traveling, learning something, maybe getting a certification. And Saturn in Pisces is much more like yoga and meditation and spiritual or psychic development, and like the psychic arts, right? So there may be something kind of tied to that for you that you're focusing on building. And then next year, when Saturn crosses your sun, that's when you're like, okay, now I'm ready to present this or publish this or share this or teach other people. And it looks like you're going to have a birthday with Saturn on the sun. So there is like a huge responsibility that's going to come with your next solar return. But right now, with Saturn being in your 9th, trying your ascendant, there's a lot of support. And I think that spiritual work can really nourish the soul, can help calm some of the emotions, make you feel safe. And I would also look into, Pluto, transit Pluto oppose your moon. Being a Cancer rising, the moon is your chart ruler. So it's extra sensitive. You're really sensitive with eclipses. And we just had that solar eclipse square your moon. So it can have you feeling like questioning whether or not you feel safe or secure in certain relationships or financial situations. Pluto is going to go retrograde and it's going to oppose your moon again. And I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm just giving you the heads up. Like when the North Node hits 29 and Pluto's hitting 29, right around mid-July of 2023, you're going to feel, probably an immense amount of pressure. And there's going to be some things changing either with your home life or with your finances, and you're going to feel like you need the support of other people. So I would look into what was going on in 2020. Saturn was going back and forth in opposition to your moon. So maybe it was a separation, maybe somebody died, maybe your home changed in some way. And now here comes Pluto, and it's also coming in to make that opposition. So sometimes Pluto moon oppositions, we're afraid to move, we're afraid to start over, we're afraid to say goodbye. And there's like a lot of emotional purging that goes on. And really the solution is the square, and that's the North Node in your 11th house. So making friends with people who can also help you through some of these life transitions are going to be key to being able to come out the other side, and really finding the security and the support and like kind of like the camaraderie with like other women who are going through other major life changes. So hopefully that's helpful for you. Good luck. All right, so we've got Jasmine. (52792) Richmond, Virginia, 9:23 a.m. Recently ended a relationship, but kind of want this person back, but where is it headed? Is it time for dating? So Cancer rising, and you've got a moon in Aries, and you've got your sun in Gemini. So the eclipse squared Pluto in the 7th house, for everybody, even though Pluto is at 0 of Aquarius and the eclipse was at 29, it was less than a degree away. So many people have been asking me, why was that eclipse so significant? It's because you literally have to look at where the eclipse is in Aries. There's some action going on there that's squaring Pluto that brought about some uncomfortable ending, right? So if I look at your chart, you know, you're an Aries moon, so it's going to affect you pretty significantly as well. But that eclipse was in the top part of your chart, square Pluto. The eclipse was in your 10th house of career responsibility, but it's also about authority, and the eclipse was right on your Juno. So what's interesting about that is that an eclipse on your Juno is basically kind of like wiping the slate clean, making you go, is this really the kind of person I want to be with like forever? Like, could I see myself committing to this person forever? Like, could I marry this person? Because Juno is about marriage, right? So sometimes if a solar eclipse is going hand in hand with a breakup, it can mean within this placement that you're kind of clearing the decks in a relationship if it's somebody who you don't see going the distance, or if it's somebody who's not going to be able to be an equal partner, because that's what Juno is about. It can also be about issues pertaining to whether or not the relationship was public enough, or was mature enough, or was serious enough, or if there was some kind of sense of direction. So that eclipse was pretty significant in your chart. Pluto is also squaring Juno right now. So it's much more difficult to find that there is relationships that are in balance. Is it time for dating? You're going to see, even as Pluto retrogrades back into Capricorn, from this eclipse all the way through July, it's making Pluto the focal point in the 7th house. Okay, so that makes me feel inclined to tell you, and I would say this to any other Cancer rising, if you're in a dynamic where somebody is toxic, right, Pluto, if they're going through a crisis, if they don't want to change, if they're lying and not being honest, if they are screwing around, if they're, you know, doing Pluto things, right? Pluto in Capricorn especially can be like somebody who wants to have power over you, or somebody who wants to dictate and tell you what's going to happen and how the relationship's going to go. And if you're feeling like that is taking away from your ability to have a say in anything, if that's taking away from your authority, if that's taking away from your ability to focus on work and career in your own life, then as the North and the South Node move to square Pluto, I mean, whoever this Pluto character is going to be, likely given your astrology, they're not going to change. You're just going to become more aware of the fact that it's like, wow, this is actually a problem. So I would really pay attention to July, because then you're going to have the sun come into your sign, and all these planets are going to be in Cancer and Virgo, and you're like, what about me and my needs and my security? And it may be a time where you're just like, no, you're still on some bullshit. I'm not doing this. So I would be very cautious about just jumping back into things, okay? You have your Sun, Mercury, and Venus in Gemini. So that doesn't mean you can't commit, but I am going to tell you, like, there's a multitude of options for you. Saturn is really what rules your 7th house. So it looks to me like a lot of your Saturn return has also been challenging, because you had, you know, Uranus that was squaring Saturn at the same time. So there was a lot of, are we friends? Are we something more? What are we doing? You know, maybe changes in relationships that actually created problems with friendships and vice versa. So being that you have so many planets in your 11th house, like, you can't bypass friends or goals or your social life for a relationship, number one. Number two is you got Saturn and Neptune and Uranus all kind of belonging to your 7th house. So you're going to have people who are inconsistent, not always stable, might have mental issues, might have addiction issues, because that's what the Neptune Uranus is. And so the one thing that's going to keep you grounded is, like, you have to have solid friends. Pluto is trining your Mercury and your Venus, and it's going to start trining your Sun. And that tells me that you want a partnership and a relationship that is going to feel like they're your best friend, right? They're not going to want to keep you from your friends. They're not going to want to drive wedges. You're not going to want to have a relationship with somebody where your friends hate them and then they also hate your friends and you feel like you have to pick one or the other. I mean, the future really with Pluto making those trines is that if you have the right person, they're going to say, sure, you know, I want you to go and hang out with your friends. I'll drive you to dinner. I'll drive you to the bar or to the airport. Then that's probably what you'll get with the Pluto trines. But generally when Pluto squares the nodes, we have to take out the trash. And I would say that to anybody, but it's going to actually be the hardest, I think, for the cardinal signs. So if you're a Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, or Aries rising, right? the Pluto squares are going to be so incredibly pronounced that it may be painful, and there may be things that we have to actually kind of quit or we have to end. So for you, being a Cancer rising, it's like some Plutonian type person. So I'd be very cautious with just letting anybody back in, especially because it looks like there's going to be some more acting up that's probably going to happen over the summer, particularly in July and August. And I can see with the retrogrades and also just the emphasis within the first 3 houses that you're going to be like, nope, I got to put me first. So if you must stay connected, then my advice would be, you know, just be cautious with how quickly you jump back into something. And do not take for granted some of the trines to your 11th house where some of your friends may potentially be trying to tell you like, no, dude, this ain't your guy, you know, or this isn't your person, or, you know, we don't want to be hanging around if you're crying over some person you're in a relationship with and like doing the ping pong, the back and forth. You'll also have a retrograde here later in the summer. So I think with an eclipse on your Juno, one thing that you're not aware of is that there can be an indication that it's getting ready to bring in a really prominent relationship, right? So that's what's coming in for you. Like you're going to see that, whether it's when Jupiter hits it or when you have other, you know, transiting planets aspect that. That's a really prominent transit. I have the feeling it might bring in a relationship. So I would say try to be mindful of the person that you had to cut out. Try to stay open for what comes in. And when you have a very strong Saturn transit, then that's when relationships are going to grow. But off and on all year, Saturn is going to be squaring Venus. So I think that there is going to be a sense of needing to exercise more caution in relationships. And I would look forward to maybe when like Saturn is starting to come out of the square with your planets in Gemini. And probably when Saturn is, you know, in 2024 and 2025 sextiling your 7th house, and it's also starting to kind of come into a sextile with your ascendant, you know, relationships should get a little bit smoother. But you also want to take a look at like your progressed Venus and some other placements. But right now with eclipses in your 10th, North Node, Jupiter in your 10th, you kind of have to be the one who's running the ship right now. Okay, and there's bigger things going on that's really about your career and things that you're going to be kind of initiating, and you can't let other people get in the way of that. Okay, hopefully that's helpful for you. Good luck. Scorpio and Gemini, it's a pretty toxic combination sometimes, unfortunately. Those 2 signs, they hate to love each other, they love to hate each other. Let's see. Okay. So, Abby. 2:24:81, 1:12 p.m. I want to know about Saturn and Pluto and the eclipses. You're welcome, Jasmine. All right, Abby. So, Cancer rising, Sun in Pisces, Moon in Scorpio. You want to know about Saturn, Pluto, and the eclipses. Okay, so Saturn is in Pisces. It is moving through your 9th house. It's going to be in your 9th house all year. So learning, traveling, growth, potentially meeting people who might live in other places, establishing relationships and business relationships with people in other places is a thing too. But Saturn is about to come into contact with your sun. So the sun for a Cancer rising whole sign is going to be about money, resources, and possessions. So it's about what are you learning about what you possess? What are you willing to invest in when it comes to traveling and learning? I also think at a 6, I think it's going to be about you learning new skills and learning new techniques and new ways to be able to make more money, or you might be like teaching yourself something that might allow you to learn more about your finances and your resources so you can also produce more or save more. Saturn in Pisces is trining your ascendant, so it's helping you look at things more positively and like learning more about your spiritual routine so you feel comforted and nurtured. Sometimes Saturn in the 9th house, we can move like further away, go back to school, get a certification, get married, because the 9th house is ceremonies. And Saturn rules your 7th house. So I noticed Saturn is now off of your Venus. So if you have had some love life issues, they may get better. And now Saturn coming into contact with the sun can be a time where you're like, okay, I want to meet a serious person. I want to settle into a relationship. I want commitment. At a 6, it means you might meet somebody through work, or you might meet somebody like while you're, going to a doctor's office or working out, focusing on your health. Saturn is going to hit your sun, and that's going to be starting right around mid-May. The sun also being the ruler of the second house might be about making changes in what you're eating. It might be making sacrifices and cutting back on certain things that you're spending money on as well. Sometimes Saturn on the sun can make us feel a little bit more kind of like down, or especially in Pisces, we can kind of get the blues, and there can be some health issues. There can also be some issues with your immune system. So if you're traveling and stuff, because Saturn's in the 9th, just make sure you're washing your hands, taking your vitamins, all that stuff, especially if you're like on airplanes. If you're not traveling and you're cutting back on that and you're focusing on like taking courses or learning something new, or maybe you're investing in education, try to be positive and optimistic about what you're spending and what you're investing in, and know that it's going to actually bring you more in the long run, so it's worth the investment. With Pluto, now Pluto's in Aquarius, so it's still in your 8th house Placidus. It just has a different flavor. So what I'm really looking at is that Pluto is actually quincunx your ascendant, and it's sextile your natal Uranus. So actually for the next year, there's something really interesting going on. You have what we call a yod, so it's a sextile between Pluto and Uranus, so you're changing your habits and your routine, and you're detoxing and clearing negative emotions and bad habits out of your system. And it's all putting the focal point on your 0-degree Cancer rising. Personally, I think that this is helping you get more in touch with your emotions. It's teaching you how to nurture yourself more, and it may also be creating some changes with your body. Okay, so be very mindful of like medications, changes to your daily routine, changes with your diet, fitness shifts. Yes, you can see profound changes in your physical body. So if that's something you're wanting to do, I think Pluto in the 8th house could be like detoxes and cleanses. And it may positively affect your digestion with the sextile to Uranus. But I think it'll also bring out a lot of like emotions and things that maybe you haven't processed or you haven't dealt with, because Pluto quincunx the ascendant is a little uncomfortable. Pluto is going to retrograde back into Capricorn pretty soon. So by the time we have the next like eclipse coming in May and we get into May, Pluto is back in Capricorn. So it'll technically be in your whole sign 7th, but it's still going to stay in your 8th house. So you might feel like there is a need to still clear out old relationships or hash out issues with other people. While Pluto is in Capricorn, it's not really aspecting anything. Like you're out of the Pluto square Pluto. It's not sextiling your moon anymore. So actually when Pluto is in Aquarius, it's sextiling your natal Uranus. And I think that for you, that's just about switching your routine and switching up your beliefs and probably learning more about health and fitness. The eclipse that we had was in Libra. So it was in your 11th house of goals, friends, and associations. It was obviously in a degree that was pivotal, and it was squaring Pluto. So I feel like this can be a feeling of like being on the brink of some changes with some of your relationships. You may feel like some relationships are on the fritz, and you may feel like other people are beginning to come in. You may question whether or not you can like rekindle certain things with friendships, especially if you've been going through some kind of change or like emotional or financial crisis. Pluto in Capricorn, that's been in a square to the eclipse in the 11th house, is like working through some of your stuff and healing some of that stuff before you reconnect with some of your friends. And that eclipse is going to keep playing out. So it's going to play out in mid-May when Jupiter hits it. It's going to play out in July when the North Node hits that degree as well. And the South Node's going to keep moving through your 5th house. So you're not going to see too many changes there other than clearing out stuff from old relationships, clearing out childhood issues, and it's a really wonderful time to be really opening up and doing a lot of activation work in regards to healing the inner child. The next eclipse that we're going to have is going to be in Scorpio. It'll be around 14 degrees of Scorpio, and that is going to be very, very close to your moon. So just make a note of May the 5th. There'll be a lunar eclipse full moon. That's going to be at 14 degrees, conjunct your moon, which is important because it rules your ascendant. And in opposition to Chiron. So I do feel like it's about healing. I do feel like it's really important to be creative. It can be a wonderful date or romantic or kind of like connecting with somebody new vibe. And I like the fact that it's also going to be very close to your vertex. So if you're looking to meet someone, this can be a wonderful eclipse for that. If you're already in an established relationship, it's a time where you just might focus more on intimacy and having fun and planning some kind of togetherness. And be mindful that an eclipse conjunct your natal moon, if it's your first house ruler, or in your fifth house, can also be an indication or just like a warning of like an incoming pregnancy or romantic partner. Okay. Good luck. Hopefully that's helpful. And we've got Jennifer. And that was August 1st, 79, 3:15 p.m. What's up, JFab? This eclipse is conjunct my natal moon, totally feeling it. It'll either be sever the head and eat it energy or ugly crying. What do you think? Well, it really depends on what your annual perfection year is. That's part of it. Let me do some math here. So you're 43, so you're in an 8th house year. And the 8th house for you is whole sign, it's Gemini. Okay, so it's a Mercury related year. So this next eclipse Jennifer's talking about is on the 5th, and it's going to be right on top of her natal moon. At the time of that eclipse, Mercury is retrograde. So if you notice, Mercury is retrograding in opposition to your moon. Okay, so technically for a Scorpio rising, you're going to hear the retrograde is in the 7th house, which means there's miscommunications and problems with others just in general. So it can be romantic partners, it can be somebody you're married to, it can be clients. I think that having Mercury in opposition to the moon is agitating enough because it's like you want to communicate and connect with people, but there's some breakdown going on there. And then you throw an eclipse on top of that. It's just highlighting your natal moon Uranus conjunction where you feel emotionally kind of like stunned all the time, very psychic, but always kind of like on edge. It's also highlighting that opposition to Chiron in your 6th house, which can be about digestive issues and problems also with habits and scheduling and actual health ailments, right? The 12th house is like subconscious and things that happens like, you know, psychically or etherically. The 6th house is the physical effects. So actually like stress, negative emotions, worrying, paranoia with all that Scorpio in the 12th actually triggers issues with your health, your digestion, your throat, your thyroid, you know, dietary habits, what have you. So I think that really the eclipse is highlighting that. Now, if you want to get technical, the moon rules your 8th house in Placidus, which is about endings, death, and regeneration. So you also want to look at your lunar return. So I don't know if you know how to do that. You can go on astro.com, plug in the city that you're in, do the lunar return. I would compare that to your natal because the truth is when you have a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse that happens during a lunar return, it's going to play out all month long. Okay, so it's going to feel very intense between now and the eclipse, but it's going to play out all month long. So even though it's a full moon at the time of your lunar eclipse, for you, right? It's a full moon because the sun is in opposition to your moon. It's a new lunar cycle. So it's going to feel like there's big shift hitting the fan all month long. Ugly crying with a Scorpio lunar eclipse, yes, but not because it's in Scorpio. I would say because it's in the 12th house, which can feel extremely emotional and sensitive and that you need like your own private space to cry in. The opposition to Mercury retrograde in the 6th, where you become aware of habits and the fact that maybe you do need to change your schedule so you can take better care of yourself emotionally. And if you need a couple days for downtime or you need to change something with your sleep schedule, or if you do end up having like, you know, something that comes up emotionally, that you're really tending to yourself and you're giving yourself the time and the space that you need, even if it's interfering with your work schedule. It's even more challenging because you have Jupiter in Leo. So it's going to square your natal Jupiter and it's going to magnify everything. You got to take into consideration what the moon rules. So home, family, mothers, women, private life, Uranus is, you know, sudden changes. I wonder, is this going to prompt some kind of crisis either with a female sibling, with a female neighbor, or with the mother figure? I could see this eclipse bringing in like noisy neighbors and like getting into it with some crazy wackadoodle, you know, woman that you live next to, because Saturn is in the third and it's trining. I could also see this being about something going on with a sister who's going through something and she tells you a secret, and you're going back and forth trying to talk her through something, and she's stressed out and you're worried about her and you're up all night. Or something in regards to a relationship with like a mother figure and some kind of crisis that you're working through there. Before I, you know, make any predictions, I generally look for several aspects. And so the fact that Saturn is trining this loosely is one. The fact that Saturn's about to hit your south node is two. The fact that this eclipse is loosely trining your IC is three. The fact that the moon rules the 8th house is four. You get where I'm going with this? Like, there's a lot that seems to indicate, especially with your south node being at an 8, that this eclipse may be preparing you for Saturn hitting your south node, and it's you finding out or having some conversation with your sibling that your mom's having health problems, or you're talking to your sister about, you know, whether, or about the issues that maybe you're having as well. So Saturn's going to get right up to your south node, and then it's going to retrograde. And if you've been no contact with either one of these people, I think definitely the eclipse and the retrograde can bring that up. Because you have your natal Uranus in the 12th house, and because it's a Mercury retrograde, I want you to really pay attention to your dreams. There can be a sense of dreams prompting you and giving you some insight into something that may be coming in the future. If you have pets also, because you're in a Mercury year and Mercury is retrograding in your 6th, it might be that there are some health issues going on with a pet. And obviously the very stereotypical kind of general reading for an eclipse in Scorpio, for a Scorpio rising, if you have any planets in Taurus, is essentially like other people are going to start giving you a piece of their mind. So just be ready. Even though it's mostly happening in your 6th house, it might be more your coworkers. It might be, you know, people who help you if you go out and you get a service and there's some miscommunication about a service, or there's some tiff with somebody in the office. But the 6th house does deal with enemies, and the 7th house deals with open enemies. So you've kind of got it doubly. If you're in a relationship, just be mindful that there can definitely be a sense of old habits dying hard coming out with the eclipse in your sign, and it's setting a partner off. And I think that with some of the trines to Saturn that's taking place, there can be a sense of really communicating, expressing what is and is not working within a relationship dynamic. But keep in mind, the eclipse can be activated now. So you don't have to wait for the eclipse to happen. I would really look at what happened with this most recent solar eclipse, right? The solar eclipse was at 29 degrees of Aries. So it was on the cusp of your 6th house, and it was quincunx your ascendant. So there was already some kind of accident, delay, health problem, issue, crisis that already started cropping up. The eclipse that's coming up is just wrapping that up. So if you need more rest, recuperation, especially if you are having stress to the point where it's affecting your health, it's just going to, you know, it's just going to really cement the fact that like you need to really, really listen to your body. Because sometimes eclipses in the 12th house can put you in a hospital bed, it can put you in a mental institution, it can put you in a jail cell. Wow, I was just going to ask if I had to take the last 2 days off of work from pain. So here you go. So what's going to happen then when you have the eclipse there is that if you're not listening to your body, there can be more coming up that you haven't processed. Like, I think you need a couple days worth of rest and sleep. Scorpio can be pain, but it can also be the process of needing to really rest and eat the appropriate foods and be nourishing physically, because Taurus is about food, or taking herbal supplements to kind of help get back on track. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Sending you lots of healing vibes, JFab. I hope you feel better and really listen to your body, because a lot of people are like, what about when the eclipse comes? And I'm like, as soon as the first eclipse hits, you're already feeling the next one. So we're already in it. Hopefully that was helpful for everybody. It looks like we got everyone. If you guys haven't already, please give me a thumbs up. I appreciate it. It helps the stream. I will be back next week. So next Friday, we're going to be doing tarot readings. So it'll be the same time, 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. I'll post the link probably on Wednesday or Thursday if you guys want to sign up. I've got a new astro weather that's going to be coming out on Sunday. We're going to talk a little bit about the sun coming into contact with the North Node. We're going to do horoscopes next week, and we're also going to be talking more about getting ready for some of the astrology in May. I cannot believe it. The year is going by so fast. If you guys like my content, please make sure you're subscribed. Click the button below. You can also head over to my website at beyondtheveiledtarot.com. I teach astrology. I also teach you guys how to read tarot. I have one-on-one sessions. I do birthday, solar return readings, synastry for relationships, election readings for the best dates for things. So if you guys want to book a reading with me, I'm always happy to see you. Otherwise, I'm sure I will see all of you guys very soon. Please enjoy the rest of your weekend. Take care.